Hello and welcome to another video here at Frontline Model Hobbies, and I think you might have already guessed it, we are building the Wyverns. So I'm going to be building this one, wings out, non-Suez crisis markings, whereas Lenny at RTB Models, he's going to be building his wing folded with the Suez crisis markings as you can see on the box. So that's what he's going to be doing. So really itching to get on with it. I'm going to stop talking shit and I'm going to be building it with this guy here. So let's crack on. Hello and welcome to today's video. Now I'm going to go quickly through what I'm going to be doing on this kit. So obviously you've got the cockpit section going together there. Hopefully that should be first, and then over the page you've got the semi-complex control rotating prop going together, like Lenny. I'm not going to cock it up. But either way, so you've got the camera system going in there, you've got the prop system going in the front, and you've got the cockpit, the rear camera, the rear wheel, and then the rear section, and then that goes together. So hopefully it should be alright. Now over the page, that's going to be for the next video, so we won't concentrate on that one. But what I am going to do is put in this wheelbase system. Now we'll have to see whether it fits or not, but it's probably only one of the major aftermarket sets that you can get, but either way we'll have a go and see if it fits. Moving on, we're doing the cockpit section, and as you can see I'm using Tamiya extra thin, the quick set stuff. I've already cut the cockpit parts off, the sprue, and cleaned them all up. I mean, it's quite self-explanatory. You don't need to be all that. I'm not going to teach you how to suck eggs. But unlike Lenny, as you can see here, I'm actually gluing the parts on the right way round. Sorry mate, but needs. Anyway, next section I need to show you is that you need to make sure that the pin marks at the back, the injection pin marks, are sanded down like I'm showing you here. Just make sure they're all sanded down. Obviously you're not going to get a flush fit if you don't. With that, the cockpit is done. Now nothing really major to talk about on this one, other than that the rear bulkhead, when you put that in, it doesn't sit flush to everything, but it does when you put the side consoles on, and make sure the injection pin marks are sanded down. Now these two parts that I'm showing you here, I forgot to sand down, so don't forget to sand them down in the future. The last major part to the cockpit is obviously the ejection seat. Now I did have one problem, one main part really, and that's this little tiny geezer. And this one has got some like burring or injection moulding crap on the back, which stopped it fitting flush anyway. So what I'm doing here is taking a scalpel blade to the back of it and just deburring the back, making sure that everything's square. Don't take too much plastic off. If you do that, then obviously you're taking the main part of the main plastic. When you fit it, there's going to be big gouges, so go steady. You could probably do it with a sanding stick, but either way, just crack on. So the next bit that I noticed was where you can glue A21 and A25 together and then put it onto A27. But what I found was, and it would be easier, is to glue either one of the two back pieces to the front piece like I'm doing here on A27. Just gives you a better fit really. That's what I found anyway, so either you think I'm stupid or what, but that's what I found. And then gluing the other part together. So putting the two halves together on A27, not really a major problem apart from the top box on the ejection seat itself was slightly off to one side, but bit of super glue, you'll be fine. Next is gluing the side walls together for the ejection seat. Just make sure it's all square. Nothing again to really explain on this one, other than that there's nothing really that keeps it in situ. Just make sure it's square. So just showing you here that there's a couple of gaps front and back. Just there's a lot of play in the parts, so just make sure everything's nice and square and looking good. Alrighty then, so now on to the tasty bit. So doing the control rotating prop. Now this is going to be quite controversial, so I'm not going to fit this into the fuselage when I put the fuselage together. I will explain that in a second. But this is what we're going to end up with. So a bulkhead behind the front prop rotating system on the front, so that we can remove it like so we can do some paint work. So it's going to be something completely different. Don't take my word for it, take Mrs. John Cleese's.
With something completely different.
And now for something completely different.
Is it just me, or did it actually suit that? Anyway, so as I said, completely different, proper left field. So I've glued 2 cocktail sticks to a pencil. Now, bear with me. So what we've got here is me, after the 22nd and maybe 24th time, and I am not kidding, trying to do a circle, or half circle, following the profile of the fuselage, as you can see there. It does work, kind of. It's not going to be perfect, but I don't need it to be perfect. Just need it to be sort of spot on. With that profiling done now, I'm just basically cutting it out with some scissors. It's easier to overcut than undercut, so leave yourself more material than less, because basically you can sand it down. It's a lot easier that way. So literally just follow the profile-ish and you should be fine. Like I said, you can sand it down after, not a problem. Now it's just a simple step of test fitting. Now this is literally cut out, so it's not too bad. I'm pretty pleased at that, to be honest with you. And then it's just a case of using the tabs that you've got there just to locate the front nose section, or whatever you want to call it, putting your bulkhead in, and then just squaring everything up and making sure it's good. With that all done, it's just a case of gluing it in. Make sure that the front nose section's in while you do that. And just for an extra peace of mind for myself, I'm super gluing the back. I always do this for critical areas, especially on the back of them. It's just an extra peace of mind. Now with that section done, I need to stop it twisting or rotating round when it's located in. Now I've put basically a bar in there of 4mm plastic, 4mm thick that is, and it just stops it rotating around inside. So I've basically cut the 4mm plastic out. I'm not going to show you how to do that, it's quite self-explanatory. I'm not going to teach you how to suck eggs. But you just place it in situ like so, and hopefully it stays in position. Stay in position, you bastard. There we go. And then it's just a case of cutting around it. I'm just marking the plastic so that I know where to cut. Doesn't need to be perfect so long as the bar goes through. The reason why we're doing this again is just to stop it rotating, and again it's moving. Stop moving, will you? There we go. Right, so scoring the plastic, there we go. With that all scored, we can take it apart and then we can score it a bit deeper so that we can cut it all out. With it all scored, now you can cut it out. I've used some side cutters to get the bulk of it, and then I'm just trimming it down with a scalpel blade, this being number 11. And now it's just a case of test fitting. So you will have to come back and forth with this just to make sure it's a plug fit. Let's face it, I've not done this the first time. This is probably the 10th time of me trying to make sure it's all square and it goes in properly. But that's what it takes, so that's what it takes, either way. This is the brown trouser bit, cutting the tabs off, see if it fits later. So working on the gimmicky bit, which is the workings for the control rotating prop. Not showing it yet, it's 2 cogs going in there, self-explanatory, just look at the instructions and you should be fine. Now putting the first, or the closest to the fuselage prop in, and then we're going to put the next parts in between the 2 props, which is C27, which is going on first. Then we're putting on C18, make sure it goes that plug system down, and then C28 goes on top like that. Then we're putting on C15. Now I'm doing it this way because it's just so much easier to do it from bottom to top. Then if you spin back to the previous page, page 3, next we're sticking on C10, which has got this ring system that fits on really well. Then finally what we're doing here is putting on the final prop. I'm going to stick it right on its shaft, so you get it right in its hole and slot it right on, and it should slip on really well. We'll gloss over that, shall we? Anyway, so finally when I've got it on, there we go, it does actually fit. So next part is putting on C21, if I remember rightly, and then finally putting on C8, which does actually fit. As you can see, without cleaning anything up, it does actually go on, fits very well straight out of the box, and it does actually work. Look, it spins. Yay! So I didn't cock it up. And finally, it does actually fit in. I'm not going to go into the innuendos again, but there's no twisting force there, which is very cool. I'm happy with that. Now then, my lads, it's time to do some priming, which is probably one of the worst things you can do, but either way, I'm using Tamiya X18 semi-gloss black for the primer, and then for the base coat I'm using Guns Sangyo H416, which is their RLM66 black grey. Next up, after the base coat is on, I'm going to apply Guns Sangyo H316, which is a light grey white, to the base coat. Just put it in your colour cup straight away, as you do there, mix it up, and you can go as light or as dark as you want. Next up, what I'm going to do is just spray streaks, splodges here and there where it's lighter. Keep the lightness to the top of the cockpit, if you know what I mean. The cockpit floor is going to be dark and lighter as you go the way up. That's how I do it. And there we have it. So as you can see, it's a lot lighter at the top, which is what I wanted. Next bit is doing the instrument panel, where here I'm using Attacker's Traffic White, and I'm just going to put it on the back like so, and then just brush it on. Basically, I cocked up earlier, as you can probably well tell. As you can probably well tell here, when you've painted the back of it, and you put your glove behind it like I show you there, it's white, what I wanted. Next bit for the instrument panel is gluing the acetate to the back. So making sure everything's all lined up, so all the dials are lined up with the holes. That's priority, you don't want them off centre. And then what I do is tack it on like I'm doing here with some super glue. Something quick and easy, dries quick and easy, and you're done. Last and but not least with this bit of the instrument panel is actually gluing it into the cockpit. So I've used 2 large blobs of super glue, and actually for me, I didn't cock this up. It was just a case of lining it up. You've got to be quick. Obviously it's super glue, but I managed to do it in one sitting. Pushed it down and it went straight in. Not a problem, to be honest with you. If you push it more to the top rather than at the bottom, it seems to fit in there a bit better, at least in my case anyway. So happily moving on to something that I really kind of enjoy here. So I'm using Vallejo's White Top Black with some just normal tap water, to be honest with you. I've thinned it, but probably not thinned it enough, and what I do is use it as like a pin wash, lay it dry, and then hopefully you can just pick out the detail and then it's done for you basically. But again, what you can do is if you're not thinning it enough and you've got too much black on there, what I'm doing here is just going over the top again with some just basic water, just normal water, and just trying to spread it out. Spreading it out a bit more, but again, I've probably done it too much. I do come back in with the black again just to spread it out a bit, just to make sure it's spot on. I sprayed on a flat clear just to give the weathering some bite. I'm not going to show you how I did that. Dry brushing. Now this is something I don't do very often, but that being said, it does actually look quite nice when it's done. Gives it that nice scratched worn effect. Here I'm using XF19, which I'm copying Lenny's idea, I know. But that being said, if you just get some on your brush like I show you here, and if you knock as much as you can off, obviously the more you knock off the brush, the less is going to be put on there. If you want to build it up slowly, I suggest going down that route. But here I'm just whacking it on because you're not really going to see much in there through a little tiny hole on the side of the fuselage. And again, same principle on the instrument panel. That being said, I'm putting a lot less on. Slowly getting there, aren't we? So moving on to the weathering, so I'm going to use Abteilung Shadow Brown, Buff and Copper Oxide Blue to be very, very random, which should give a nice light effect on the cockpit itself. So here's me sticking it, whacking it on, trying to give a pin wash, but in some areas, especially in the floor, just whacking it in there. You can either do one or two things. You can either slap it on, or like I'm showing you there, or you, like I said, you can give it a pin wash. It's up to you really. It's your plane, your cockpit. Now it's a case of taking it off. I'm using a smaller brush here because either I don't want to take too much off or I want to be quite precise. Either way, it still does the same effect. You don't really want to come in here with like a yard brush or whatever. But, you know, take it off willy-nilly, leave it on. Again, it's up to you. Now, what I'm doing is I'm doing some streaking. So I'm picking it up from the bottom rather than the top. Gives it the same effect. You're never going to see this in a million years. I don't even know why I did it, but it looks cool. This bit, I'm using the Copper Oxide Blue mixed with a bit of Buff, just to give it a bit of lightness. Maybe sometimes I could chuck in a bit of Shadow Brown in there. It's up to you, to be honest with you, and just lighten it up a bit. So, cue the music. Then it's just a case of using the white spirit and blend as you go around. As you can see, I just mainly did the top areas. And there we have it. That is the cockpit done, with the exception of the ejection seat, which I'm going to put in right at the end of the build. And I've painted all the back and I've inserted the camera there. Some of you might be thinking, what the hell are you using there? Well, my missus uses this stuff on nails. And basically it's a non-white top coat by Pure Nails, and it's awesome for clear stuff. I mean, uber awesome. I actually set this in layers rather than just in one go, and there we're putting in the last layer, and I'd set it with a UV lamp, and it stays like that. It stays crystal clear and it's rock hard.
Spoken like a true man.
I've not shown you the two halves of the fuselage going together and everything in between, but suffice to say it does all go together. Now what I'm doing here is, before I start sanding, I start rescribing all the detailing again. So here I'm doing the rivets, and then next I'll be doing the rescribing, just to make sure that when I do sand it down, it stays in situ. And the rescribing tool I'm using is the UMM Rescriber USA, which is the number 1, which I've just shown you there. Ooh, time for sanding. Now, some people might find this a bit of a bugbear, but I kind of find it therapeutic. So anyway, what I'm doing here is sanding flat to the surface. Now, the reason why I do that is where the 2 halves of the fuselage join, that line there, I want to sand that rather than the plastic either side of it. Just make sure you do that until you can see the plastic either side being scratched, and then you can do the profile. And it should look something like this, hopefully. The best part for using this rescribing tool is that you can push and basically bridge the gap between both sides of the fuselage, which is so much easier than any other rescribing tool. And then when you've done that, you can do the hook part and you can rescribe normally, coming either both ways to make it look as perfect as can be. And there we have it for this first part. So I've done the front, the rescribing, the riveting, I've done the back bit. Hopefully it should be okay, especially when it comes to primer. I've done the tail. The only problem I've found is that I've punched holes through the tail because it's so thin, so be careful, especially when using a pin vise. So that should be good. Come on then, move on, dickhead. Yes, we've seen the tail, thank you. And the other side, yeah, it's not too bad, to be honest with you. I've painted the tail and put, well, the tail wheel, shall I say, painted that, put that in. I've also done the bottom, as I showed you earlier, and I've rescribed it and re-riveted it. Nothing really major to talk about on there. Hopefully I'll show you, yes. Oh, and I've found a couple of holes just here. I'm going to fill them in, it shouldn't be a problem, so I should be able to fix that. And the front is done, just exactly the same. So, I just want to say thank you for watching this video, and I will see you in part 2.